we'll see what happens with Mali. You actually are just in time, Mr. Ranking Member, if you'd like to ask questions. Can I defer? Sure. Mr. Burchett?
Chair Lady, if the Ranking Member would like to go, I'll yield to his wisdom and aid.
He just yielded to you.
Okay, great. Very diplomatic on this committee. I really dig that, Chair Lady. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. It's not in my notes, but sometimes I get popped from some people back home on the internet, and they say, Burchett, what does any of this have to do with the 2nd Congressional District? Well, dadgummit, it has a whole lot to do with it. Freedom is something we should all cherish, and for good folks in Africa that are trying to get it, and it ticks me off when people try to take it from y'all. And I appreciate every one of y'all being here in your testimonies. Y'all got that one for free. That wasn't in my notes, but I heard that some of the officers who took part in the Malay coup d'etat had recently returned from Russia. Additionally, I heard reports that some of the coup supporters were spotted waving Russian flags after President, how do you say his name, Chair Lady? Is it Kita? Is that how you say President Kita was deposed? What, if any, was the role of Russia in this military coup? Any of y'all want to take that? It's fine with me.
Congressman, you're right. We have seen those reports. In fact, we saw images in Bamako demonstrations after the coup, people waving the Russian flag, and also the fact that the Russian ambassador in Bamako was the first foreign ambassador to meet with the coup makers. However, we haven't been able to trace any direct linkages in terms of Russia's role. But that's certainly something that needs to be watched very closely.
Yes, sir. I suspect if they're carrying AK-47s and waving Russian flags, that's pretty evident of what the heck's going on. Thank you. How's the resulting political turmoil in Mali affecting the security situation in the Sahel?
Unfortunately, Mali has turned out to be the weak link as countries in the Sahel, ranging from Niger Republic, Burkina Faso, and countries that are part of the G5 Sahel, which is a combination of Chad, Mauritania, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic, fight to curb the expansion of violent extremists in the Sahel. As we all know, northern Mali has been in turmoil since 2012, and so to have the government in Bamako be undermined further aggravates what is already predating risk for the country that could be further fragilized by violent extremism. It is important that the government of Mali regain its feet and regain its commitment to democratic government and a professional military that can help working with the partners, for example, the French with the Operations Barkhane and other United Nations peacekeeping forces to curb this spread. Because if Mali falls, if any one of the countries in the Sahel falls, then the coastal countries along the West African coast are going to be immediately hit. And that would mean that would be very catastrophic for the rest of the continent.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Meservey, you published a report recently where you documented that Chinese companies have built around 190 African government buildings, including over 20 houses of African heads of state. Combine that with the reports that Huawei technology is used during construction, and we are looking at the Chinese having ample opportunities for spying and intelligence gathering operations. What more should we be doing to highlight the Chinese Communist Party's attempt to undermine democratic governance and support for authoritarian regimes?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think that one of the best things we can do, and it's a longer term solution, but I also think it is the most effective chance we have here, is to buttress civil society organizations in Africa. A number of them have actually been effective in shining light on some Chinese activity going on. So they've been able to expose deals that were not to the benefit of the country. They were able to stop projects that were going to be environmentally disastrous. So they have had a surprising amount of success. And I think the U.S. should double down on its support of those sorts of organizations. That includes journalists. The Chinese government has made a very concerted effort to co-opt African journalists all across the continent. So I think the U.S. needs to launch sort of a counter movement, if you will, where we support independent, ferocious journalism on the continent. So I always come back to civil society. I think that's a critical part of what we need to be doing on the continent.
Okay. Chair Lady, thank you. I've gone over my time, and thank you for your courtesy. I have to go to the Small Business Committee. I apologize. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for
You're
being here.
Thank you.
Let me go to Representative Phillips.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bass, and greetings and gratitude to all of our witnesses today in this important hearing. Strengthening democratic institutions.
Do you get closer to your laptop? There you go.
Okay. Is that a little better?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Strengthening democratic institutions and exposing democratic backsliding is terribly important work and a distinct priority of mine in Congress. The United States is not perfect. We all see what's happening in our very own country right now. But what is important is that we are constantly working to improve, to strengthen, and to encourage free and fair elections all around the world, including in our own country, and to use our voices powerfully, but also peacefully. I'd like to start to talk about, my question will be first about Ethiopia. While Prime Minister Abiy advanced a vision of national unity early in his term by releasing political prisoners and unbanning certain political parties and promising free and fair elections, it has become very clear that there's a lot more work to be done relative to his reform agenda. So I've heard a lot of concerns from my constituents in Minnesota regarding restrictions on civil liberties, violence perpetrated against civilians by state and non-state actors, arrests of human rights activists in the Somali region of Ethiopia, and detention of political opposition leaders. So my first question is for you, Mr. Temin. What can Abiy's government do to mitigate ethnic incitement into religious conflict and hate speech without restricting civil liberties? And going forward, how can the government more effectively respond to ethnic and religious tensions in the country?
Thank you for the question and for raising some very concerning issues in Ethiopia. There are no easy answers to these questions. One of the most important steps is that the Abiy government really seek to consult with the political opposition and politicians across the spectrum, and they haven't been very good at doing that so far. The decision they made to postpone elections was probably the right one given COVID and logistical challenges, but they did that in a vacuum without consultation, and that's led to a lot of the grievance that we're seeing now. Elections are now supposed to happen in 2021, so the government needs to start now a real process of consultation with the entire political spectrum to talk about the road between here and those elections and how those elections can be as free, fair, and transparent as possible. Those elections really can be transformative. But the government simply has to stop reaching for these tools of past repression that we really thought were relegated to history. And they need to be called out on that, frankly. The U.S. and the rest of the world should not be in the business of celebrating Prime Minister Abiy. That probably happened a little bit too much, a little bit too quickly, even given some of the remarkable early steps. But we need to be in the business of strengthening Ethiopian institutions and Ethiopian civil society and those who are investigating and highlighting the abuses that are going on. The ethnic violence is substantial, and it is hard to contain. I will note that there are voices that are fanning this ethnic animosity across the spectrum, many of them in Ethiopia. Some of them are outside of Ethiopia, too. And we do need to keep an eye on those voices, including in the diaspora, who do sometimes fan the flames of ethnic tension.
Thank you, sir. And we also have elections coming up in Cote d'Ivoire on October 31st, I believe. Of course, it's clear that the country is at risk as well for large-scale violence against civilians. According to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, early warning signs of mass atrocity are already visible and certainly warrant attention. I've just introduced House Resolution 1150, which highlights this important issue and urges the government of Côte d'Ivoire, opposition leaders, and all citizens to respect the democratic principles, refrain from violence, and hold free and fair and transparent elections this October. Dr. Biko, regarding Côte d'Ivoire, what can the United States and our embassy in particular do to support transparent and peaceful elections in October? And for that matter, in Ethiopia and Somalia, what can be done to create conditions for those same free and fair elections next year in 2021? Dr. Biko?
Yes. Thank you for that, that question. Yes, the upcoming elections in Côte d'Ivoire are quite worrisome because the violence has already started. We've seen that with opposition forces or opposition supporters being attacked. The important way to support civil society is to support efforts that help civil society track what the state is doing, how to substantiate results, to make sure that there is inclusion in voter registration. Those are things that kind of fuel the violence, although the underlying reason for the violence is the fact that the incumbent is seeking to run for his third term. And so that is the real issue that is fueling a lot of this violence.
Thank you.
And adhering to term limits is one way that will stop.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.